Hey everyone, welcome to Stress Test. We are so excited about our guest today. Um, he is insane. Well, you'll get that joke in just a moment. But yeah, Stephen
He's
Blandino
insanely
is
smart.
on the show with us. Welcome, Stephen, to the show.
Thanks so much, Shane and Sue. So good to be with y'all.
Yeah, man.
It's nice
Welcome
to
to the
see you again.
pod, as the kids say. Welcome to the pod.
That's
No
right.
kids say that.
No kids say that? All
No.
right. And I'm definitely not a kid, so I shouldn't be saying anything that the kids say. But yeah, well, thanks for being here with us, dude, man. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. We had a good year last year, and
Mm.
2025 is off to a great start. So very, very grateful.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us. If you don't know Stephen, um, he and his wife pastor the church, Seven City Church. He's an author. You're going to hear about his book in just a moment. Fantastic book. He blogs. He's writes in several magazines. He's written some great books. Man, 30 years experience in local church and nonprofit ministries. He's passionate about helping and engaging personal growth. In fact, one of the first times I ever met you, Stephen, was in a breakout session at Church Multiplication Network. And you talk pouring into leaders. You do it everywhere you go. You and I have gotten to be a part of several cohorts together and leadership time, and I've loved getting to know your heart.
Hey, thanks so much. It's always a joy to talk with both of you, and just appreciate so much the difference you're making, and both through pastoring and your resources and your book, and just you guys are awesome. So grateful to know you, and grateful for what the Lord's doing through you.
Yeah, we were excited. I got to meet you. Was that a Ready, Set, Grow event?
Yeah.
You and
Yeah,
Scott
your
Wilson.
lovely wife, Karen, who's an amazing therapist. And so you said your name, and I was like, oh, I've read his stuff because you write regularly in Influence Magazine. And so it was so much fun to talk with you about the writing world and about, just the Christian writing experience. You just are so talented and love your wife. She was great to talk with. Stephen and Karen have one daughter, Ashley, and a son-in-law
yep,
and two
yep.
grandsons.
Two
And
grandsons.
since
Yeah.
we've talked to you, we've entered the grandparenting world.
Yeah,
So
Oh,
we're in the
that's the
club.
best.
yeah,
That is
we're
the
in the
best
club
right
and
there.
we cannot see her enough. We're so thrilled. But
Yeah,
anyway,
that's
you
awesome.
yeah, so I guess your daughter, right, lives near you. So you see your grandsons and your kids
Yeah,
regularly.
they live about an hour and a half from us.
Oh,
They
okay.
live south of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're kids pastors at a church and doing
Uh,
great. We got two grandsons, Elijah and Wyatt,
yeah.
3 years old and 5 years old. So they're a lot of fun.
The busy years.
That's right.
They are going to be busy. Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
fun.
Well, Stephen, we love having you back. You've been on Stress Test before, about a year ago, and loved having back. Both you and Karen were on
That's
Yeah.
right.
that time, and we
Mhm.
really loved having both your input. But you just wrote a book. Stephen's book is called Insanely. That's the joke. Insanely Practical Leadership. Incredible book. Our staff right now is going through this.
Mhm.
We are enjoying it, and I hope today you get some insights, getting to hear from Stephen's heart. So, Stephen, let's dive in, man.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
what a great start to this book and thinking through. When I looked at just the table of content,
Yeah, it's really good.
and I immediately knew that
It's a very practical approach.
yeah, how to grow you, how to be a spiritually grounded leader, how to lead with character, how to think like a leader, how to manage your time, how to make leader decisions. That's just under how you lead yourself, then mastering the art of leading others. And it's just concrete, foundational stuff. And I was so impressed by it. But tell us a little bit about why you wrote it, kind of what your heart was and your vision for it.
Yeah. I like to refer to insanely practical leadership as leadership for the rest of us.
Mhm.
And there are some people in the world that are natural born leaders and
Mhm.
they are amazing. And then there's the rest of us who had to kind of figure it out the hard way. And
Mm,
so this book addresses that need by hopefully taking some of the guesswork out of leadership and providing people with a roadmap
mm-hmm.
to develop 12 insanely practical leadership skills. So like you mentioned, how to grow you and how to lead with character, how to make leadership decisions, how to build influence, how to communicate well, how to lead through conflict. Like those are real
Mm-hmm.
life things that we deal with as leaders. And
Mm-hmm.
so every chapter tackles one of those and then provides a really practical tool at the end of the chapter to help you put that idea, that content, those insights into practice.
Yeah, I loved I love the topics that you chose, and we've mentioned this often in our own leadership. Like, why does nobody teach you these things? So,
Yeah.
you go to seminary, you learn how to understand scripture and explain it, and practice teaching and all of this stuff, but conflict resolution, staff conflicts, miscommunication, like these issues are not something that anybody teaches you. And so the book is insanely practical for that reason.
Thanks.
I love that right off the bat you say you're not a natural born leader. I think that's a very disarming and encouraging way to approach a leadership book. What advice could you give to somebody who maybe is more comfortable following, but
Sure.
maybe they've been a staff pastor or, something along that nature, and then they find themselves in a leadership position that makes them uncomfortable?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and just touching on that whole idea of a natural leader versus a learned leader,
Mm,
um, you know, research from Gallup shows that only 10% of people have the natural
mm,
talent to manage and lead, which means 90% of us are not natural born leaders. So,
mm,
um,
mm.
we're learned leaders. Again, we had to figure it out the hard way. We had to learn through trial and error. We had to learn through the ups and downs. So that's not something to think poorly of yourself about, right? I mean, that's most
Right.
of us. So through my leadership journey, I've just come to realize that just because I'm not a natural born leader doesn't mean I can't be an extremely effective leader. And
Mm-hmm.
so the best advice that I can really give to learned leaders is to do exactly that. Learn and lead.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, start by adopting an aggressive learning posture, an aggressive growth posture, where you're just going to commit yourself to learn as much as you possibly can. And that's what I did. I mean, I would read as many leadership books as I could. I would go to leadership conferences. I pursued a master's in organizational leadership. I got leadership coaches and mentors
Mm,
and went to workshops. Like I just did everything I knew to
Mm-hmm.
do to learn about leadership. But it's not just the learning part, it's also the doing part.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I had a friend years ago tell me, he said, you really don't learn to lead in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You said you learn leadership concepts in a classroom, right? You learn ideas and insights in a classroom, and that's important. But the place you actually learn to lead is in the trenches. It's
Mm-hmm.
when you get in the trenches that you learn to live out those principles and test them to see if they actually work. And so I think it's the combination of both. You've got to do learning, and that may be reading a book or attending a conference or whatever. But then you got to get in the trenches, and you just have to do it. So even though you feel like you're more of a follower than maybe a leader, uh, it can be learned. It can be developed. You can grow in this, but you just have to embrace those two things. I'm going to learn it, and then I'm going to practice it. I'm going to get in the trenches and make a run at it.
mm.
What would you say to the person that is more of I'll just get in the trenches and I'll figure it out. I don't need to waste time going.
Yeah,
I don't want to spend money on, and there's a lot of leaders out there. I don't
Yeah,
need that. I'm not going to that conference. I don't need to
ready,
do what,
fire, aim.
yeah, I don't need
that's
to do
right.
what
Yeah.
people are doing in a 5,000 member church because I've got a church of 200. So that doesn't
Yeah.
apply to me.
Mm.
Yeah, well, you can certainly do that. But you might have a
You
few
go for
more
that.
scars to show for it. And you're gonna have enough scars to show for it if you do all the learning you can. But
Mm.
if you remove the learning piece, boy, you're probably gonna have a resume with a few more battle scars, and some of those may do a bit more harm than what they needed to. So I just say Learn from people who have gone before you. Learn from people who have fought those battles, who have navigated those situations. When we think we have to prove something, that's when we get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah.
Rather than just humbling ourselves and saying, I'm going to read, learn, grow, ask questions, and then take that and start fleshing it out, living it out, getting in the trenches and putting it to work.
You bring up a great point because, when I started leading, a lot of us, if you have that natural leadership and you need to learn whether you have it or not. But a lot of natural leaders I found, maybe this is your experience too. In my life, I found I had a lot of roadblocks, things that cause I ready,
Yeah.
shoot, aim, right,
Mhm.
already fire, aim. I jumped in the trenches to Sue's point. I began because people, when they recognize a natural leader,
That.
you did it. But I said it my way.
Yeah.
I think my way too.
I didn't say that about you,
No, I know
but
you didn't.
but I do think it's true that people
Yeah.
who easily can attract followers think, oh, this is all I need is if people go where I'm going,
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah, but now back to the regularly
Yeah, sorry.
scheduled question.
All right, go back.
Okay, all right. So, well, here's my question. Do you find a lot of leaders have this roadblock, and you actually quoted it in the book this way, and I love this quote.
Mhm.
It says, for growth mindset to take root in your life, you must give an eviction notice to the limiting beliefs that are holding you back. And I wonder if that also applies, Stephen, to kind of the learned things that I've maybe learned the wrong way,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that I've got to give that same eviction notice. Is that your experience?
Yeah. In fact, I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes we learn something and then we have to unlearn it, and then relearn, because we realize what we had learned wasn't the best way to do it, or the shelf life on it expired, and I need to, need to upgrade things. So there's that aspect of just recognizing, I have to have a lifelong learning posture, not a
Mhm.
one-time learning posture.
Mhm.
It's a posture that says, I don't have it all figured out and I can learn for the rest of my life. And I'm going to continually draw from the wells that are going to help me get better. And those wells are books, those wells are conferences, those wells are people, mentors, coaches. Those wells are deep, and draw from them often. Whenever it comes to that idea of evicting limiting beliefs, what I believe directly impacts the future that I'm going to create for myself.
Mhm.
And so, think about the children of Israel, and whenever God was going to give them the promised land, and so Moses sends the 12 spies in to explore the land. Two come back with a great report. 10 come back and say we can't take the land. We're like grasshoppers compared to the people in the land. And what was happening in that situation was that their limiting belief about who they were was holding them back from what God had promised to give them.
Mhm.
And I love what Darius Daniel said one time. I heard him say the spy's biggest problem wasn't the giants in the land, but the
Mm.
grasshopper in their head.
Mm. Mhm.
The giants in the land, they didn't have to do anything to
Right.
defeat the Israelites, because the grasshopper in their head had already defeated them.
Mhm.
So we have to give an eviction notice to those kinds of limiting beliefs. Otherwise, we're not going to grow to our full capacity, and we're not going to, I think, inherit perhaps what God wants to give us or even entrust us with.
I think that's so important. I know in my life that has been critical. That I just send an eviction notice to every unpractice that I've learned and need to unlearn. That I send an eviction notice to any limiting belief. I have such a defeated mindset sometimes. Otherwise, I can't, there's no space. There's
Yeah,
no room in the inn for all of these great ideas.
yeah.
How does a growth team help you do that? So you talked about a growth team. We've talked about a growth team. Um, a growth team can be instrumental in shaping the ideas that are in your head, either negatively or positively. How do you create a healthy growth team around you
Mm.
so that
Yeah,
mindset and your
yeah.
actions are good?
Yeah, so in the book, I talk about, in that first chapter on growing, I talk about you've got to have a growth mindset, you've got to create a growth plan, and you got to assemble a growth team. And a growth team is made up of people who are going to help you grow in strategic areas of your life. So, for example, my wife would be on my growth team. She helps me
Mhm.
grow in terms of our family. I have leadership coaches who help me grow in leadership and in ministry areas. Every time I write a book, and you guys know this, y'all have written books. Each time I write a book, there's an editor that's on my growth team that's
Mm,
going to help me write better.
mhm,
When it comes to finances, I've got a tax guy and an
mhm,
advisor that I can consult with about money. All these people make up,
mhm,
are members of my growth team as well as others. So here's the thing that I've come to realize, like, no one person has everything I need to grow.
mhm.
And so oftentimes we're looking for the mentor, right? The coach that can just help us in everything. That person doesn't exist. So so that's the value of a team approach, is saying I'm going to assemble a team of people and each one has expertise in a specific area. And I'm not going to ask them to help me grow in other areas that are
Right.
outside their window of expertise. I want to help them to help me grow in the sweet spot where they just have great insight, great perspective,
Mhm,
great wisdom. And if you do that, you may have 6, 8, 10, 12 people on your growth team, but they're
mhm,
all giving you the best they offer in whatever area of expertise they have, and you get to benefit from all of it.
mhm. Well, how do you handle transitions of those people? Like, what if somebody ceases to be helpful to you,
Yeah.
or it gets toxic, or it just runs its course and you need to replace them? Like, how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to just be honest with yourself to say, am I still gleaning what I need. Now, if this person's like I mean, obviously, there's not going to be a replacement whenever it comes to, family members, and there's not going to be with maybe some lifelong friends that you have, but with other people that are maybe coaches or counselors or financial advisors or whoever, like those things are going to change, and that's completely okay. You may need coaching in one area, you get it from this person, and then you move on. I had a coach actually tell me one time. He said, "You know what? If a person works with me for 2 years, they're probably going to get about everything I have to give." They were just
Mm,
really honest, and I appreciated
mm,
that because I thought,
yeah.
okay, that's good. It
Yeah.
almost gives permission that, okay, I'm gonna tap this well, and then when the
Mhm,
time is to move on, you move on. And when I'm coaching people, I tell them the same thing. I mean, in our very first conversation, I'll say, listen, if at any point this coaching relationship is no longer benefiting you, I want you to know you've got full permission to tell me, and there's no hard feelings. Like,
yeah.
I want to add value,
Yeah.
but I don't want to exceed that time. Just know it's okay to have that conversation. And I think if we can just be honest and open and upfront and real about that from the beginning, then
Mhm.
you go a long, long way. You can benefit from people and then you move on. Doesn't mean that you don't like them anymore or that you're
Right.
not even, friends or not even can benefit from them. It's just you realize it's time to transition to something new.
Is it helpful to have a combination of people who, I mean, obviously you want them to all have your back, but maybe see things the way you see them, and then maybe also some people who are completely personally unaffected by the decisions that you make in your ministry, like they're from other places, they can give an unbiased assessment of,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think especially with leadership coaches, ministry coaches who are not connected with your ministry, they don't have the emotional baggage that we oftentimes carry when we're trying to make hard decisions,
yeah.
and they can just see from a different perspective and help us, see from that perspective when we're just so up close that we can't see past the pain of making the decision. And they're like, well, time out. Let me help you see a broader picture here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because Karen's not here, let me represent her. Untangling some of those emotional
Yeah,
perspectives can be hard to do, and you need somebody on your growth team, right, who's like Karen
yeah,
is a professional counselor who you can really
absolutely.
process with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Because they can, Karen and I joke sometimes that counselors can't tell anybody anything.
Yeah.
Right. When you tell them stuff like, that they can't go tell anybody. And so it's a safe space for you to just process some of the emotions you're feeling and the things you're navigating. And that's immensely valuable, especially in ministry and in leadership, where you know how it is. I mean, you get hit with all these things that it's just very easy to internalize, and having someone to
Yeah.
process it with can be just immensely valuable.
It sounds so basic and so simple to say, let's put a growth team around it. It's a lot of people don't do it.
Right.
They get bogged down with that. And I love your encouragement in this book to say this is a foundation.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
insanely practical, y'all. This is foundation,
Yeah.
growth team.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you talk about also that is timeless in complete and utter um, failure on my part sometimes is just that, the topic of time. How do we manage time? We talk about stress a lot on this show. And one of the things that we talk a lot with people that we're walking with in life and other pastors is their time, starting with the Sabbath and how we manage our rest. But you talk about time from really these three circles. And if you have the book with you, everybody, I'll put it up here. It's page 97, the three circles that really manage our purpose, our why, our how, and our where.
Yeah.
And when you look at time, why is that so helpful and why is it insanely practical and foundational?
Yeah. Yeah. So most time management strategies today tend to focus on getting more done in less time, right? I mean, that's kind of what, when we're thinking about time management, that's what we're all trying to accomplish, right? If I can just get more done in less time, that's a win. And that's an important part of time management, but it's not the only part. It's, in fact, to only focus on that is incomplete. So the three circle time management method I outline in the book, think of it as a Venn diagram, and the first circle is the why circle, and the why circle focuses on purpose and values. In other words, time management doesn't begin with time. Time management begins with my purpose. It begins with the things I value the most. Um, so when I identify my purpose and I identify my core values, now I can define where it's most important for me to spend my time.
Yeah.
If I don't identify my purpose and values first, I risk efficiently managing my time to get the wrong things done.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah.
That's not a picture of success, right?
No,
Who
right.
cares if you get the wrong things done faster, right? So so the why circle helps you identify what is my purpose and what are my values. When that's clear, you move to the second circle, which is the where circle. And the where circle focuses on roles and priorities. In other words, you're asking yourself, what roles will help me fulfill my purpose and values? And so for me, one of my roles is pastor. Another role is writer. Another role is coach, right? We've all got different roles in our life. So you want to choose roles that are aligned with your purpose and with your values. And the reason is, if like, especially with work, if you choose a work role that is aligned with your purpose and values, that means you get to spend 8 hours a day or more living in the sweet spot of your purpose.
Awesome.
My purpose is not to pastor. My purpose is higher. Pastoring is simply a role. It's the role that I believe God's called me to help me fulfill a purpose. So the where circle is saying, what are my roles that are going to help me fulfill my purpose and values, and what are the most important priorities I need to focus on in that role?
I was just with a pastor who we recommended your book and he ordered it instantly after I told him this one thing. I'm going to say now, so in case it's helpful to anybody else, I'd love for you to talk about it. You determined your value by coming up with an hourly rate per hour of my life. Okay, so taking, let's say you make $100,000 a year, you divide it by 2,000 and something, 43 or whatever it is, hours. And then you come up with your hourly rate of 40 some dollars. And then you weigh that against everything you're doing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
is this
Worth $40 an hour.
activity right
Yeah.
now worth 40 some dollars an hour?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because I like, what a practical way to look at it.
Yeah, so I got that concept from Daniel Harkavy. He talks about it in his book, Becoming a Coaching Leader. And he says, if you take, um, he said, imagine how much money you want to make 5 years from now. Like just pick a number. And then he said, take that number, divide it by 2080. 2080 is the number of hours in a work week if you're working 40 hours a week. That's the number of hours in a year if you're working a 40-hour work week.
Mhm.
And when you do that, you're going to come up with a hourly rate. So if a person said, hey, I want to make $100,000 a year, you divide it by 2080, that's roughly $48 an hour. If a person said, I want to make $250,000 a year, and they divide it by 2080, that's roughly $120 an hour. So the number isn't the important part. The important part is saying, once you figure out what that number is, the important part is saying, now, is how I currently use my time worth that hourly rate?
Mhm.
Mm,
So if you want to get really personal with it, you go, okay, is scrolling through social media worth $48 an hour to me?
yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Best or the worst $48 I've just spent.
That's
exactly.
so good.
Is watching TV mindlessly for hour after hour worth
Mhm.
$120 an hour to me? And a person, and I get it, a person may push back and say, yeah, but I don't currently make that much money per hour. But that's the point.
Right.
If I'm using my time like that now, chances are I will never make that much money per hour
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
because I'm using it the wrong way. So
Mm.
so it's just now, and I'm very, upfront in the book. I'm not saying that money is simply the only value for time, but that illustration provides kind of a gut check where you
Mhm.
suddenly go, ouch, wow, uh, man, am I using my time wisely? Am I using it
Mhm.
to honor the Lord? Am I using my time in a way that is wise stewardship of this resource God has entrusted to me?
Mm,
So, so anyway, the on the three circles, you got the why, which is your purpose and values. You got the where, which is your roles and your priorities that help you fulfill that purpose and value. The third circle is the how circle. And the how circle is all about planning and boundaries. It's about how am I going to plan my time? What boundaries am I going to set? Which is where a
Yeah.
lot of the time management teaching today focuses on. So
Right.
that's the last circle, not the first circle.
Yeah.
mm,
So if I do a good job of clarifying my purpose and values and then choosing roles to help me fulfill that, then I can just, the house circle just helps me be real intentional about the use of my time within what are the right roles in the first place.
Mhm.
mm,
And so the sweet spot is where the three overlap,
Mm.
where the
yeah.
why, the where, the how overlap. That's the sweet spot. And here's what I note in the book. Time management without purpose and values leads to an unfulfilled life.
Yeah.
Time
It's
management
good.
without roles and
Yeah.
priorities leads to an unfocused life,
Mm,
and time management without planning and boundaries leads to an unhealthy life. So you
Mm.
need
good.
you need
Yeah,
all three.
that's
That's
so
so
good,
good.
dude. Man, love that.
What was the last one? Unfulfilled, unfocused, and
And unhealthy.
unhealthy.
Yeah.
That's so good. Well, um, all of that supports the statement that you made. Urgency is reactive, but
Mm,
the important is proactive. So I think in time management, we tend to go towards, like you were saying, what is the most, do the most important thing first or whatever. But
Yeah.
urgency and importance are not the same. Can you talk a little bit
Right.
about that
Yeah, yeah. So
distinction?
so urgency is reactive, that means that we react to whatever screams at us the loudest.
Right.
So whatever screams the loudest feels most important, even though it's not most important a lot of the times. And so we
Yeah.
just react by doing it first because it's screaming the loudest.
Hmm.
But but the important is proactive, focuses on proactively doing what matters most, what truly is important, even though it may not be screaming the loudest. So, for example, I
Mhm.
never wake up in the morning and hear my Bible screaming at me to come read it, right? Or to come and pray. There's always something else screaming at me for my
Yes.
attention,
Yes.
but that's not what's most important right then. What's most important is I need to begin the morning with God. I need to open my Bible. I need to write in my gratitude journal. I need to journal on a passage of scripture. I need to spend time in prayer. That's what's I've got to be proactive about, even though there's other things that I could very quickly react to.
Mhm.
Mm.
And so, getting clear on those priorities, and then, you put the planning and the boundaries in place that you need to. One of the ones that Michael Hyatt talks about that I think is just a great one. He talks about starting every week with your big three and every day with your big three. The idea that what are the three most important things I need to get done this week? And then
Mhm.
each day, what are the three most important things I need to get done today? And when those things are aligned with your either your annual goals or your quarterly goals, then you're taking these great big goals and you're breaking them down into manageable, bite-sized pieces. So, like with our
Mhm.
staff, every staff member, we work in seasons. We have 3 seasons a year we work in,
Mm.
January to April, um, May to August, September to December. And in each of those seasons, our staff all create a personal growth plan and they all create their departmental goals. And then in addition to that, we have one goal that is shared across the entire team. It's like our big goal that everybody's got a stake in the game. Well, I encourage our team, hey, take those goals and then you break them down. And you say, okay, what's most important to get? If this is what I want to get done in the next 4 months, what do I need to get done this week? What do I then need to get done today?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that just becomes a practical way to assimilate that into
Mhm.
your regular schedule.
You've been a point leader for a long time, Stephen. So you've been the lead vision caster, the lead visionary in your church for a long time. And so when you set goals, a lot of times every year you probably pray, you hear from the Lord, you start to shift. Maybe sometimes some of those shifts become directional changes, some of those vision changes, which is okay. You talk about this in your book, but give us some coaching today on how do we do that without, turning the boat and losing 100 people or
Yeah.
making people feel like, they're kind of
Yeah.
being tugged back and forth.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. Uh, First, if you change your vision, there needs to be a really good reason for the change, right?
Mhm.
In the book, I tell the story about Sir Ernest Shackleton, who, he had a vision to cross Antarctica,
Right.
and takes this expedition, and that's his vision. But when his ship gets stuck in the ice, and then the ice literally crushes the ship and it sinks, well, now your vision has changed
Yeah.
because what has happened is, I mean, it's outside your control now, and now your vision is just to get your crew back home safely. So, so that was a good reason for a vision change because Shackleton realized, yeah, as much as I'd like to cross the continent, the truth is we're at risk of losing everybody's life. We got to get back home. So if you're going to make a change to your vision, there's got to be a really good reason for it. And if there is, you just got to have an honest conversation with your team and lay out the reasoning behind it without having to scream new vision, right? Without having to convince people. Like you should be able to
Mhm.
in a practical, calm way walk through here's the reality that we're dealing with right now, and here's why I feel like we need to adjust and move a new direction. And then I think another piece to this as well is recognizing the bigger the vision, the longer the runway.
Mm,
The
right.
bigger the vision, the longer the runaway. So, for example, there are some visions that are helicopter visions, meaning you don't have to do much to get airborne pretty much immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's a, you know, a few decisions. In some cases, there's not even a meeting required. I mean, it's a pretty much, you just do it. But there's other visions that are like a Cessna, and a Cessna takes about 800 feet of runway to get airborne.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of runways, you're going to have some meetings. You're going to have, you know, more planning and preparation. And as you do that, the runway or the vision gets airborne. But then there's other visions that are jumbo jets, and a jumbo jet takes like 9,000 feet of runway to get airborne. Those visions take lots of planning, lots of preparation, lots of meetings, lots of getting buy-in from people and key leaders and
Mhm.
key influencers before it's going to get airborne. You know, a few years ago, we did a major renovation on our building that was very expensive and was going to take a lot of planning. And so before we ever, and we were going to have to, you know, do a vision campaign to raise the money for it. Well, I didn't just get up on one Sunday and cast vision for this and say, here's where we're going and here's what we're doing and everybody, you know, make a pledge. No,
Right.
we took we took months and months of planning, preparation, meetings before the meeting. You know what I'm talking about? Behind the scene
Mm-hmm.
meetings, meetings with staff, meetings with board members, like working through all that before we ever said anything publicly.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we had done all this preparation, all this planning with the staff and with the board, and then we met with our givers, and then we met with our volunteers, and then we, you know, cast the vision publicly to the entire church. So there was probably 6 or 8 months of planning that went into that. So when we stood up in front of the church and cast the vision for it, half the church already knew about it
Yeah.
because they were involved in some of that behind the scenes process. But that's the way it has to work with vision. The bigger the vision, the longer the runway. And so, you know, when you're changing vision, you've got to navigate that carefully. But then when you cast vision, you just got to make sure you're helping people through the process to
Yeah.
help them, you know, engage in it and to create buy-in.
I think, you know, and I've watched you do this a little bit, even with that example you're talking about, that people begin to live in that. You got to not just plan it, but you got to live that
Right.
vision. I know for we're just made a shift in our vision. We many months in behind the scenes, but like you said, that half the church that's in on it is actually already living it.
Yeah.
So they become your cheerleaders of convincing all of their friends why this is the greatest announcement
Yeah.
ever by the time you get to that announcement.
That's right.
You find that to be true in
Yeah,
your leadership?
absolutely. And let's be honest, when people feel like they've got a little bit of the inside scoop,
Mhm.
you know, that creates buy-in as well. We just added another service last Sunday.
Mm.
Well, you know,
Awesome.
when we before we added that, I you know, we talked about it as a board, we talked about it as a
Mm.
staff, and I told our staff, I said, hey guys, we can't just, I can't just get up and announce this one Sunday that we're going to do this. I said, so the first step is, I said, you know, the staff knows, the board knows. So the next step is you need to each contact your key leaders and bring them up to speed. And I talked to them about here's the process you need to go through to help them understand how we got to this decision. I said,
Mm.
then we're going to do a meeting with all of our volunteers. I said, and then I'll share it with the congregation. I said, there's nothing more frustrating than when you're a key leader or a volunteer finding out about something the same time everybody else does.
Right.
Mhm.
And they're kind of looking at people like, what on earth?
Mhm.
What does this mean? Because
Right.
what are volunteers asking when you add a second service or a third service or whatever it is? They're asking, do we have enough volunteers or am I going to be,
Yeah.
you know, working my tail off and so you've got to answer those questions before it gets there so that they've got the buy-in and the excitement to run with it.
That's so good. That's really good.
I think that's a great lead into a discussion of communication. So in your book, you said there were 4 types of communication: no communication, garbled communication, implied communication, and clear communication. How have you grown in your communication with your staff? Um, Maybe comment on these 4 types
Yeah, yeah,
and how they're, I mean, it's easy to have all of them at play
yeah,
in an
yeah.
organization.
Right. Well, I want to give credit where credit's due. This is from Michael Hyatt and some of his teaching on communication when he talks about those four
Hmm.
communication types. And
Right.
basically, they're at an intersection of vague versus specific communication
Hmm.
and expressed versus unexpressed communication.
Hmm.
And depending on the combination of those four elements determines what kind of communication it is. So communication that is truly clear communication is very specific and it's expressed in a way that people can understand because people can't read our minds, right? They don't know what's in our head. And so for me, I've found the best communication strategy is systematic meetings. Yes, I can employ different technology and all that kind of stuff, but every Monday morning we do a staff meeting, and that staff meeting has a very clear written agenda, and that agenda ensures that we're communicating the right things and that everyone is on the same page. And then every Monday afternoon, I have a one-on-one meeting with staff that report directly to me. And in that meeting, we're just making sure everything's clear. I've just, for us anyway,
Hmm.
though the systematic meetings, it eliminates a tremendous amount of confusion and it ensures everybody is on the same page, which means people have to be in those meetings, right?
Right, right, right.
And it's making sure. So, like even with in our staff meeting, I am always there's a part of our staff meeting where it's always looking about 30 to 45 days out, where I just do a very quick run through the calendar, because I hate it whenever I hear someone say, "Well, I didn't know."
Hmm.
So I want to eliminate that. I want to make sure that I'm just keeping this in front of people. And we don't spend much time talking about those things. It's more of just an informational part of the meeting.
Mm,
There's other parts of the meeting where we're collaborating on things, and those are things we do a deep dive on. But yeah, it's just leverage. There's some meetings can be so poorly led. If leaders can just get their head around a well-led meeting, they can accomplish a tremendous amount.
what are some of the, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I was
You
going
were
to
going to
say,
say the same thing a bit.
probably, were you going to say that? So when you have people working for you that don't clearly communicate, even though you're modeling how to clearly communicate, um, what do you do about trying to bring them along and coach them?
Yeah, I mean, that's so in one-on-ones, I always view a one-on-one as an opportunity to provide coaching when it's needed. And sometimes it's not needed, right? So I've kind of got a pretty clear process I work through for one-on-one meetings. And a piece of that is coaching so I'm doing a one-on-one every 7 days with the staff that report to me, which means I should never have to wait more than 7 days to address an issue that needs to be addressed. If there's something they need coaching on, it's an opportunity to coach them on it. So if that's the
Mm,
issue, if it's a communication issue, then I'm going to bring that up in our one-on-one and say, hey, let's talk about this. This is what I've noticed, and here's the frustration it's creating or the problem it's creating. Um, we need this to improve. So it's up to them to improve it. It's my job to hold them accountable. It's their job to improve it. But it's also my job to make them aware of it because it may be a blind spot they just don't see.
hmm.
So if I'm not making them aware of it, then I'm not doing them a favor or the organization a favor.
Yeah. I think that informs your meetings so well also. Like what the
Absolutely.
rest you're getting an individual perception of what's needed for the corporate pers perspective. And does that shape your meetings a lot of times? When you start
Yeah.
to gain that perspective and you're like, you know what? I think we need to meet on this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be things that come to my attention that I'm just going to say, okay, we need to carve this out. I may make a mental note. Hey, talk to so and so about this in our one-on-one. Um, if it's an issue that's affecting the entire team, so for example, if something happened where the entire team was impacted by a team member's behavior, like it happened publicly, I have to address it publicly. Meaning, if, for example, if a team member did something in a staff meeting that was clearly out of line, yes, I'm going to deal with that privately in a one-on-one, but I also have to deal with it to a certain level in that meeting. Otherwise, staff will think, I guess it's okay to behave that way because Stephen didn't
Hmm.
say anything about it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I've got to address it
Good.
at the appropriate level in that meeting, and then we're going to do a deeper dive privately. Um, and and so that's, you know, and thankfully that doesn't happen very often. And if you got mature team members, it really makes life a whole lot easier. But
That's so
that's,
true.
you've just got to pay attention to those things because those are culture shaping issues.
Yeah,
And you know how it is. Culture is created by what we, not just what we do and what we create, but like culture is created by what we allow.
that's
If we
right.
Right.
allow bad behavior, we are creating culture whether we think we are or not.
And I think that's why people, some people shy away from conflict resolution. You say in your book, how you deal with conflict reveals the level of your maturity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so,
How a person deals with conflict reveals their level of emotional maturity,
mm,
spiritual maturity, relational maturity. It is a unfiltered look at maturity. Okay. And trust me, we've all blown it in this area,
sure.
but that's very true.
You probably, a lot of conflict resolution isn't just between you and the leaders you're having these one-on-ones on with. They're between colleagues
Yeah. Yeah.
that you oversee. And talk to us a little bit about how you help manage conflict for others, not
Yeah.
just conflict with you or the vision, but how do you help your team build a culture
Mhm.
of appreciating conflict resolution and restoration rather
Mhm.
than shying away from all the conflict?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll address that from two angles. I'm going to give you kind of a, you know, elements that I think are important whenever it comes to leading through conflict. But if there's an issue between, say, a couple of staff members, in fact, whenever we do our onboarding of new staff, I tell them if there's ever a conflict between you and another staff member, you need
Mhm.
to understand it is your responsibility to go to them
Mhm.
and address it. Because here's what you have to understand. If you come tell me about the problem, and you want me to fix it, but keep you anonymous, I said that
Mhm.
doesn't work.
Mhm.
Right? That's not going to work. You can't come and say, "Hey, so and so is doing
Yeah.
this," but I don't want them to know that I told you.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work, right? So
Mhm.
you've
We're
got
not
to.
resolving anything. We're just
That's
making it
exactly
worse.
right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. How exactly am I supposed to deal with that? So I say, look, we're all grown adults. Go and address the conflict with the person. Now, if you go and you try to address it and it's not getting resolved and you need to include me in it, then come talk to me. And the three of us will sit down and we will work through it together.
Mm.
But like you've got to own this and go from there. Now, when it comes to leading through conflict, whether it's a, you know, between a one-on-one person like who's on the team, maybe it's someone in the congregation, whatever it might be. In the book, I kind of walk through six variables that are critical to leading through conflict, and at the center of it is cultivating trust.
Yeah,
Like trust is both the starting place and the driving force behind conflict resolution.
it's so good.
And it impacts every other aspect of conflict resolution. If trust is broken, that
Mhm.
trust, you've got to address that. If the trust isn't broken, you just got to understand you have to operate from a posture of trust. And when you think about it, some people, whenever it comes to, you know, conflict, some people act like a historian,
Mhm.
meaning they're like a history book and they're going to remind you of everything you've ever done wrong, right?
Mhm.
Other people act like a judge where they're ready to drop the judgment on your head and tell you what you've done wrong and why you're guilty and I mean they're the you know, they're the executioner in it, right? But then some people they act as a restorer. They are leading from a posture of I want to restore. And that's the posture you've got to have if you're going to cultivate trust. So trust is essential. But then from trust, and trust affects all these other things. From trust, uh, first you got to choose timing. In other words, when the conflict arises, you got to choose the right time to address the conflict. And generally, I would say you need to address the conflict quickly. And if you can't address it quickly, uh, then you just need to make sure you address it calmly. If you addressing it quickly is going to mean you're going to address it with the wrong attitude and you're going to unleash, something on this person, then that's not healthy. So calm down, catch your breath, wait a day or two if you need to, and then address it. But in general, the timing is do it quickly and do it calmly. Then you got to clarify the tension. You got to get to the root cause of the issue at hand. And otherwise, you're going to be addressing symptoms rather than the real issue. Then you got to communicate truth, meaning don't talk around the issue, speak directly to it.
Mm,
And when you speak truth, this next one is so huge. You've got to control your tone.
Mm.
You have to control your tone because let's just be honest, isn't that the thing that in conflict resolution oftentimes gets the best of the situation?
Yeah.
We lose control and our tone says things. I mean, we may be speaking truth, but boy, we're doing it in some pretty hurtful ways. So
mm,
here's what I like to say: speak the truth in the tone of grace.
Mm-hmm.
Speak the truth in the tone of grace.
that's good.
And then the last part of this is you got to collaborate together. Collaborate together. So conflict with someone doesn't mean that they're your enemy. In most cases, it just means there was either a miscommunication or a misunderstanding.
Mhm.
So so you've got to find the common ground and then you got to work toward win-win outcomes. And that requires you to collaborate together.
Mm,
So those are the variables. When those variables are at play, I think you can manage conflict well. When you
that's so
cultivate
good.
trust, when you choose timing, you clarify the tension, you communicate truth, you control your tone, and then you collaborate together. Man, I think you can go a long, long way in conflict resolution.
Wow.
That's really good.
So good. Stephen, thank you for opening up your heart, your time, giving your time and your life to this. Yeah. I really feel like this book is going to help so many leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for
Yeah,
your
thank you
time.
guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My
Well,
pleasure, and it's such an honor to be with you.
we want to let people know how can they connect with Stephen Blandino? Where can they
Yeah.
find you?
Well, in regards to the book, the book's available at insanelypracticalleadership.com, insanelypracticalleadership.com, and you can get the book there. You can also there's a master class that you can order as well as a study guide. All those resources are available there, and there's even some free bonus content that if you buy the book, you can get some bonus content that's super helpful as well. And then, anything else, stephenblandino.com is where you'll find stuff about my coaching, the Leader Fluent podcast, all that kind of stuff.
Mm. And
That's
all your other
awesome.
books.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So good. Hey, we love to, as you know, being a returning guest, we love to end our podcast with a moment to pray for our guests. So if you're riding down the road or listening to this on Spotify or audio, or you're watching this, take a moment right now. I know this was recorded and it's kind of strange to do this, but why don't you take a moment as we pray for Stephen? You take a moment and pray for them and their ministry as well. So let's pray together. God, thank you so much for Stephen and Karen. Thank you, God, for their ministry. Lord, thank you for this incredible gift to leaderships, to many leaders, insanely practical leadership, to help all of us as we lead. God, let us remember that we're followers first of you. And God, I pray, God, is that we would lead in the direction. Now, bless Stephen and Karen, bless his family. God, I pray, Lord, that this book would get in as many hands with leaders as possible. So bless them, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank y'all so much.
Absolutely. Thanks
Thanks,
for being with
Stephen.
us.
Bye-bye.
So great having Stephen with us. Love him so much. Love it every time we get to spend time with him. And
Yeah.
boy, today going through this book, Insanely Practical Leadership, such a great book. I hope you get it. What did you get from the conversation? We love to process this a little bit.
Yeah,
here.
I took a ton of notes. One thing I love about Stephen is, and this is in his regular writing, like I follow his writing in Influence Magazine and other places, he's able to take really big concepts, make them very simple, enumerate them. he's really good at organizing information.
Hmm.
So to me, that's what the podcast was too. It was taking a lot of really big concepts and making them simpler and easier to understand. So that was on the side. I liked a couple things particularly. I liked him explaining the difference between urgency and importance.
Yeah.
I have that problem that whatever screams for my attention, I tend to be like, oh, I'm just going to knock that out. And I go to that first, and I let my time get sucked up with things that are demanding rather than the things that are
Yeah.
most important
I
to
remember
my
our
vision.
one of our mentors and friends, David Mercer, used to say to me all the time that your urgency does not determine the importance of my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like that. I might be getting it wrong.
Yeah. Do you want me to keep going? Or?
Yeah, no, keep
All
going.
right.
It's
So
good.
probably the other really big
Unpacking some
thing.
good things here.
Yeah. The other big thing for me was the time management.
Yeah, yeah.
His three.
That was one of mine too.
3 questions to ask yourself with time management. Why are you doing why are you prioritizing what you're
Yeah.
prioritizing? It should be driven by values and purpose, or you will be unfulfilled.
Right.
Where are you investing your time?
Mhm.
That's determined by your roles and priorities. If it's not time well spent, then you're going to be unfocused in the wrong place if it's spent in the wrong place. And 3, how, which means planning and boundaries. And if you're not leading with boundaries and with a plan, you're going to be a very unhealthy leader, which is sort of what we talk about all the time.
It is, and being a healthy leader is important. And as I'm growing in that, some of these simple things, I never express it this way, but they're incredibly helpful. Like, I love that hourly breakdown thing he did. Like, just considering, I've been thinking about that a lot since I read his book. Just like, oh, okay, is this next hour on social media worth?
Right? Is it worth my time?
Is it worth my time? Is this really? And then putting a dollar figure to it. I don't know. For some reason, that really was a game changer for me. It was like,
That's a little scary for me. The only time I feel like I really do that with my time was when we were raising the kids.
yeah,
And I was like, I could do that, or I could spend time with the boys. And so that was an easy, way more important.
well, that's where the why, where, and how come in, right?
Yeah,
so-
because that vision is very clear cut. I think there's more gray area when you're talking about a lot of different ministries or people that are in ministry, under your ministry that are demanding your time or needing your time or wanting your time. Then I think it gets more complicated for me. Like, what is worth my time? And now that we're in the empty nest stage, we give up our personal time so readily because it's not attached to children.
Yeah.
And that's very unhealthy because
Yeah.
we can end up working from sun up to sundown, and that's not healthy. So I think, and
and
that
going
mentality
around,
will
I
help.
thought through it, we just went through this with our own team, going through our own gifts assessment and really our own ministry flows and how that works from Ephesians 4 and kind of that fivefold flow of where my why helps determine where my time gets spent. And if I'm spending a lot of
Right.
time, or if you're spinning your wheels, spending a lot of time in a place that you're really not gifted in, it's draining you. I know one of the biggest things that I got too is because conflict drains people. And I loved his take on conflict and really breaking that down and thinking through each conflict, which he did a great job with his suggestions of choosing the timing, the tension, the truth, the tone, and then collaborating. I love that. But really what I love most is that at the center of all successful conflict resolution is trust, which really lends itself into
That's why
those
the conflict
individual
happened.
relationships.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
one-on-one meetings he's having to build that trust all the time. It's really great.
Yeah, if we all trusted each other, we wouldn't have conflict in the first place.
Well,
Really, like I wouldn't.
Is that true? Do we never have conflict? I trust you.
Well, but I think there's that blurry area where I don't trust that you understand me or you see me or you hear me.
Okay.
Or I don't trust your motive for saying the thing that you said.
Oh, that's
so
true.
then
You don't trust
I'm
where I'm
hurt.
coming from. Yeah.
Like if I trusted you, I wouldn't be hurt when you say something.
Mhm.
I would assume the best, 1 Corinthians 13, instead
Yeah.
of assuming
Yeah.
that you were being mean.
I like when you do that.
Maybe
You
you're just
assume the best
tired.
of me.
Yeah, well, I don't do it enough. I'm sorry, honey.
No, I really just like it.
I'll work on that.
No, you're better at it than me. I'm the one who needs to work on it. What else did you get? Anything else?
Well, there's like 2 pages here.
Well, we have so many
yeah.
great things from this book.
Yeah,
I want
just
to
read
make
the book.
sure. I want to make sure everybody gets this. You know, go to stephenblandino.com. Go to insanelypracticalleader.com, insanelypracticalleadership.com, and go to that. But hey, I wanted to tell you also about something that's special to us. We love walking with pastors. So whether it's this podcast and interviewing people, I hope this is helpful. If it is, like it or share it. Do all the things that everybody says on everybody's podcast. But
We're so original.
yeah, we're so original. Please subscribe. Click here, right here in the button. I love when they do the little point.
There won't be a button that
There
shows
won't
up,
be a
though.
button. We're not that high tech. But here's what we do. We love to walk with pastors. We love specifically to walk with pastors because we think if the shepherd's not healthy, the flock's not healthy. So you might be healthy already, but we're always striving to be healthier pastors. So go to healthier pastors.
Any
Yeah.
kind of leader.
But go to healthierpastors.com. And if you go to that and scroll to the bottom, you'll see a discovery call on there. That's literally a phone call where we sit down and talk for 10, 15 minutes. If you click on that discovery call, even if we don't do it, we want to send you this resource to you, Death by Pastoring. And we really would love to have this in everybody's hands. So you can do that for free. Won't cost you anything. Just take a few minutes, go to the website, healthierpastors.com. Hey, until next time, thanks so much for joining us on Stress Test.